Hello, everyone, and welcome. I have with me Hannah Baynham from the Montessori Centre International. So Hannah is a Montessori teacher and a Montessori trainer for a Montessori training center here in the UK. So I'm very happy to have you here with me today to chat about Montessori, about how to train as a Montessori teacher, and your own experience as a Montessori teacher.
Thank you.
Yeah. So let's get started. So if you can start just to introduce yourself and explain who you are for our guest today, that would be amazing.
Great. Yes, my name is Hannah Baynham. I am a Montessori teacher, like you explained, but also a Montessori teacher trainer here at Montessori Centre International. I am a proud auntie of two nephews, but they live in the States, so I don't get to see them very often. But I'm always trying out new Montessori methods with them, and I follow your blog and kind of see how they can incorporate Montessori at home. So I really enjoy that.
So they have a blog, your nephews?
No, I follow your blog.
Okay. I thought that maybe you, your nephew's parents had a blog about Montessori.
No, no. I try and influence them in slow ways, and from across the
right, I see. So basically, can you tell me as well, how did you discover Montessori? How did that happen that you became a Montessori teacher?
So I was a mainstream teacher. I started teaching to travel, basically. But I was a mainstream teacher in Hong Kong, and I was working as a kindergarten teacher as well as a primary school teacher. I started to research different types of philosophies in teaching because I noticed that it was very competitive in Hong Kong. We were pushing children into academics so soon. They were doing homework. They had to kind of be at a certain level. And I started thinking about what alternatives to education there were. And I came across Montessori, and it changed my life. I read one of Montessori's books, and I said, I want to study. I need to go and study Montessori. So I came to London here to study at Montessori Centre International. And that was about 10 years ago now. It completely changed my life. It has changed my view of children. It's changed my view of my relationships in terms of how I see the world and how I see the future of education. It's really influenced my practice. I've had a lot of opportunities to work in schools all over the world, from England to India to Hong Kong, and I opened up a parent cooperative school in Istanbul, which is called Montessori Co-op Istanbul, and it was a parent-owned school, and I was able to set it up and run that school for 4 years. So
Well, that must have been an amazing adventure to set up that.
Yes.
Absolutely. And so basically, from being a Montessori teacher in the classroom and doing those projects, you became a trainer. So you came back to London, and how did that happen? Because it's like the next step kind of in a Montessori career. It could be to own a school, to manage a school, start to train other teachers. So tell me a bit more about that transition.
Yes, so I was in Istanbul for 4 years, and I started this school, and I was very excited, but it was started to run by itself, and I wanted a new challenge. I'm always a learner. I always want to continue learning, to continue to challenge myself. And so I know the experience I had here at Montessori St. Nicholas and Montessori Centre International, it changed my life. So when the job came up to train future teachers, I jumped on it. And so now I have the opportunity to work with what I consider some of the best Montessorians in the world, people like Barbara Isaacs, Sarah Otley, all of these amazing Montessori teacher trainers who have really influenced my practice and my understanding of Montessori. And so now I get to work alongside them to train the future Montessori teachers, which is a privilege, I think.
Absolutely. So maybe for those who are not very familiar with the training about becoming a Montessori teacher. And here in the UK, the Montessori Centre International is like one of the first Montessori training center in London that was originally set up by Mara Montessori herself, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So if you want to give us maybe a bit of information about how that training center started, and the recognition of that training center in the UK, because I know that we have many parents here in the UK who are interested after they've discovered Montessori with their children to maybe train. And we have a few options here in the UK, and this year is a very important year because the 4 training centers in the UK are, combining their strengths to run an amazing conference in, I think, is it September or October?
September, yes.
Yeah, so if you want to explain a bit the history of the training center and, what recognition it's given to parents, to people who want to train as Montessori teacher here in the UK framework, I would say, in the earlier framework, or it fits together. And maybe a few words about that conference, that upcoming conference.
Okay, great, yes. Montessori St. Nicholas, or it was called London Montessori Centre, I think. I'm sorry, I don't have all of the the acronyms. There's all these acronyms. I can't remember exactly. Montessori started training some of the teachers. The starter of the school, which was Leslie Britton, and she kind of had. When she came to London to do her London courses, this was part of it. And since then, since the 1950s, we've been around, and we started to do distance learning, and we're the only Montessori qualification that does distance learning in the UK at the moment. And we really wanted Montessori to be for everyone, and to everyone to have access to Montessori as teaching. So we have a campus here in London, in St. John's Wood. We have a new campus here, where we have many model classrooms, and we do a lot of conferences, and we do a lot of workshops, and we also do some teaching here, some courses here, things like the earlier educator course, which I'm the lead on, or we also do a foundation degree. We also do integrating Montessori practice, so there are many different options for the courses. I'm not going to go into huge detail about them, but if you're interested, please visit our website, which I'll put a link. We have many open days. We've got one tonight where people can come and learn more about our courses in more detail. But yes, we are kind of that. We have we have online learners, so people that are learning online from all over the world, who come here to do the apparatus practice. So to learn how to do the apparatus, learn how to use the Montessori materials, they come here. We do workshops here to help them learn, but they do all of the theory work online. And also we include things like child development and health, and all of these other types of courses that are included in becoming a practitioner, becoming a Montessori teacher, which will really heighten people's understanding of childhood and along terms with Montessori philosophy as well. So yeah, we have, like I said, we've got many different courses, but I think the unique thing that we offer here is, again, that continuous professional development. So we're constantly doing things like these conferences or workshops, or offering opportunities for practitioners or parents who are interested in Montessori to learn more about that. We've also just launched an open online learning platform where we're going to be doing some short courses for parents, and I'll also put the link for you guys as well. Short courses for parents, but also for people who are interested in Montessori practitioners, leadership things as well. And those are all online short courses, which are really dynamic, really engaging. We just did one about peace and education. There was over 1,000 people signed up from 40 different countries. And it was an opportunity, a platform for people to share good practice, to share things they do in their classroom. There were some really good forums and things. So I believe Montessori was a scientist, and she was a pioneer, and she would be embracing this kind of change. She would be seeing how we could use modern world technology, things like this, to allow more people access to understanding Montessori. And so I think really here at Montessori Centre International, we embrace that change. So.
I did a few short courses with the Montessori Centre International, and what I've taken from that and from each conference is that great desire from the Montessori Centre International to reach more people and to make sure we were like really helping the next generation to be more peaceful. There was a lot of that. And the last conference was about, peaceful education. It was very inspiring. And that online peace education course was very inspiring as well. And I think that's really something that all Montessori teachers have in common, that we truly believe that the way we raise our children is going to change the world. And so that's why it's so important, I think, for me to reach more parents. Obviously, I'm a mother, so it changed really the way I see the world after I had my children. But people that I have a background in psychology, so I was already working with children and families, and I thought it was the most important job in the world. Either you're a parent or a teacher, it's for me one of the most important jobs in the world, and it's similar. And definitely, I really appreciate what the Montessori Centre is trying to achieve, and I'm always happy to share all those free courses. It was an amazing free course about the newborn.
Yes, welcoming the newborn.
That was great as well. How to choose a Montessori school. I think that one of the next ones that's going to be free offered, and that's just a way to have this. There's so many free resources online, but I think that the way you do it at the Montessori Centre International is like you combine all the info from all around and you offer them in a kind of a condensed way to people so they can just have all the information they need in one go. And that's what we need. Because social media is great, but it's a bit overwhelming sometimes. So people will decide to sort it out for us. It's great.
For sure.
I wanted to ask you, what would be, your best advice to someone who wants to train as a Montessori teacher? You probably have this kind of question all the time. How do I train? What is the best training? What is the best option for me, and so on?
I mean, just as with children, we see every child as an individual. We also see every adult learner who wants to become a Montessorian as an individual, basically. So we offer many different options here. But the first thing that I would say is do it. If you want to train in Montessori, do it. Like I said, it's a life-changing experience. You really view children in a different way. There's so much inspiration, there's so much understanding that comes from doing a full course or the different options that training centers have. I think the most important thing is to visit, to see your options, to see what works well for your timetable, and also think about what do you want to do with your qualification, right? Are you just really interested in it and want to learn more? In which case, some of these online platforms and online things, these open learning courses might be good for you. But if you're really interested in working in a classroom or starting your own school, a child minding business, all of these things, then we recommend doing the full qualification, which is a little more in depth, but it involves teaching practice. It involves you going into Montessori schools, really practicing the skills that you've learned in theory, and really coming out with a better understanding of what Montessori means to children today.
Maybe also you can chat with us about what kind of job a Montessori teacher can do. I know that here in the UK, and especially from the Montessori Centre International, there is like a desire to have more Montessori teachers in mainstream as well. There were a few, experiments to try to have public Montessori schools, and I know many Montessori, like you, teachers who decide to go on and take on some Montessori training afterwards. And what are the options when you arrive? What are the kind of jobs you can do? Obviously you can go to a Montessori school, but here in the UK, it's difficult to find a job in a private school afterwards, and not so many Montessori schools going up to elementary. It's mainly preschool, but you can travel, with the Montessori Centre International diploma. It's accepted in other schools all around the world. You went all around the world. So if you can explain all the options like that, people realize, oh, great it is to have that kind of diploma.
Yes. So what you can do with your Montessori qualification, you can work in a Montessori school. You can be the head teacher of a Montessori in a Montessori school. So you can lead your own class, depending on which level of qualification you get. But level 3 or level 4 is what the UK education system is looking for early years practitioners. So you can lead a classroom, you can work in a mainstream school, so maybe not a Montessori school, up to age 7, you should be able to do that, usually as an assistant or someone who's kind of a teaching assistant or a supplemental teacher in that way. You can be a manager of an early years setting, which I definitely recommend if you have managerial skills. I think it's a great way to influence how education is happening in this country and around the world. You can open your own setting. I love it when parents, I'm part of a lot of blogs and things and Facebook groups that encourage people that are opening up their own settings. And it's a daunting task, but it's the most rewarding task because you'll never work as hard for something if it's your own, you really kind of invest everything you can in it, and it's a really rewarding experience. You could be a mentor in a setting, so you can mentor other teachers, you can mentor parents, you can do parenting courses, things like this, depending on what your interests are. You can be a very qualified childminder, but a lot of our students go on to open up little childminding centers out of their house, so they really understand what Montessori was about, to make sure that their classroom or their house is set up to foster independence within children, and that's really handy thing for some people. You could be a nanny as well, or like you said, you could travel the world and work in Montessori schools all over the world. I definitely encourage that. There's some beautiful Montessori settings all over, and I really feel that there are not enough Montessori teachers. And it's really a specialty. It's a specialty that is more people are interested in these days. And so kind of not only just teaching, but specializing in Montessori education opens up the doors in a lot of ways. And you could also be a tutor for children if you'd like kind of have a little tutoring type business, but that to do one-on-one lessons with children, incorporating some of the Montessori ideas, I think that could also work. So yeah, those are some of the things that you could potentially do in the UK and abroad.
And that Montessori Centre International qualification is recognized in many other countries. It is recognized, at the same level of other qualification in other countries. So you can definitely work in Montessori schools abroad. Great, brilliant. And you have mentioned the childminders. There is a specific childminding training as well that you can take on top of being, in the UK, you need to take the proper childminding qualification through your council, and then on top of that, you can do a specific Montessori training for childminders, so it's more suitable for the people who work in their house, who are going to have a broad age group, I guess. So it's a bit different than in the classroom. Do you think also that parents would benefit from the Montessori training as parents? You offer now some kind of short course, online course, more for parents, and there are many options nowadays for parents, obviously, because me and many of our guests are doing that. And but yeah, tell me more about that, because I definitely, like 11 years ago, if you wanted to train, if you were interested in Montessori, the only option was the Montessori teacher training, right? That's what I did. I wanted obviously to work in the classroom, but that really helped me as well as a parent. But yeah, do you think it's beneficial for parents to take the training? Is there better options when you just want to learn as a parent, basically?
So I also teach parenting courses with the Museum of Childhood. We've done these free courses, a 6-week course where we just bring in parents from the community. I myself am not a parent, but I see myself as the facilitator. I think there's nothing more irritating than people telling you what to do, how to parent. So it's more of that conversation about understanding that how Montessori viewed childhood, how Montessori viewed the stages of development, and really recognizing those stages, those sensitive periods within your own children, and how you can cater towards that, and how you can kind of work towards, doing the best you can as a parent. So I think if you just want to be a parent, the full Montessori course might be a bit too much, because we're really focusing a lot on the academic side of the academic materials. And although I think those are some things that you can incorporate at home, I don't think, unless you're going to homeschool your children, that Montessori, the academic side, should be so focused in the home. I think then that kind of blurs the line sometimes with the parents. They kind of, parents and the children, they kind of feel like it's a chore, not something that they want to do. But there are so many things that you're indirectly preparing your child for school, for later learning, through some of the Montessori materials and through some of the Montessori activities that you can do. And I know that you do a lot on your blog, activities of everyday living and practical life, things that are preparing the hand, preparing concentration, and things like that, and fostering independence. And I think what I received for feedback from the parents that did the parenting course that I led, they were saying things like, this has changed the way I view my child, and this has changed my understanding of what my child is really needing, and that, to me, I mean, that's so rewarding and so wonderful to see parents, because you don't need a qualification to be a parent, right? And a lot of parents, they feel sometimes overwhelmed, and it's about really coming together as a community. And I think things like this, a forum, a conference for parents to understand Montessori, but coming together as a community is really key, because you can discuss with other parents what has worked for them. You can discuss how they've done things, and then you have that facilitator. You have someone who understands the Montessori method and kind of can promote Montessori's understanding, but giving you the keys, you the tools, the same way we do with the children, right? We can only give you the keys, but you open the door, and it's about you developing those relationships. So,
yeah, as you say, we are guide. We're not the one who are going to make the decision for the parents, so direct the parents. It's really being a guide and a facilitator. And I think it's continuing what Maria Montessori has started, because obviously she was doing the Montessori teacher training and training teachers. But that book was published recently, Montessori Speaks to Parents, and shows that she wanted to educate parents as well. And in the first classroom, she used to have those conferences with the parents. And as a Montessori teacher in the classroom, we try, to educate parents constantly, because we educate the child, the whole child. So it's not just those 3 hours in the classroom. The child is going back home, and we need to kind of have the same understanding of the child, and keep doing what we do in the classroom at home. Exactly. And respect the child's needs in the classroom and at home. So, exactly. And as you said as well, the things that most parents take from any courses they do with a Montessori teacher or with a parenting coach will be to understand their children. And that's something that is very lacking when we become parent. That's something that I've discussed with previous guests as well. It's like, you are given your little baby, you go out of the hospital, and then you have no clue what's going on. And if you have no previous knowledge of child development, child psychology, and no previous experience with children, because to be fair, many of us we were not teachers before we became parents. Maybe we were working in a factory, in a bank or something, and that's the first real child we see. Since we were a child.
Yeah, and even if you were a teacher, it doesn't mean you have all the answers either when you get your own child. So.
Absolutely. I remember I was working already in early years before I had my first child. I was working in the nursery, and mainly with babies and toddlers. And I remember I was super organized with a nappy change. I had everything ready like in the nursery. And when the nurse came and she observed me changing my baby, she said, "Oh, well, you know what you're doing." And I explained, "Well, I was working in the nursery." So she said, "Oh, you will be fine." But I was having so many questions. It was not the same. And so I didn't even dare asking my questions because she's kind of put me in that box. You know what you're doing. And so I didn't dare asking anything because it was like, okay, what am I going to look like if I say that I don't know what I'm doing? And then you have to figure it out. But I think that's what is amazing with social media. We can complain a lot about social media, but when we decide to use them to connect and to learn and to teach, then I think it has become an amazing tool. And obviously, you may have noticed that as well. I don't know for how long you've been working in the Montessori world, but that Montessori has started to become so well known all of a sudden, and it's in a way it's a bit, frustrating when we see that it's not really what is Montessori that is shown, on Instagram accounts or blogs or all the toys that are on sale, so these kind of things. But on the other end, we have a great chance to really break through the myths and address some misconceptions and making sure that a message is out and helpful for parents and for all kind of teachers. And what I think is amazing as well here in the UK, and I really noticed that in my group, that we have so many, mainstream teachers being more and more interested and wanted to train and wanted to change what they can do in their little classroom. So they cannot do everything because here in the UK, like, for example, vertical grouping, it's very rare that a school can do it. But we see the teachers starting to kind of fight back and saying, okay, it doesn't work because of this. I read that book about Montessori and I know that, like, for example, giving a sticker to the child is not going to really help on the long term. So they start to question, and hopefully, I have a kind of the hope that is going to come back into the mainstream education. I don't know if you feel like that, if that's a project of the Montessori Centre International, and so on. So what do you think?
Yeah, we're definitely looking at how we can influence policy, how we can kind of bring Montessori, the true understanding of Montessori out there. I mean, and you talked about that kind of changing a system, right? The system, it's not really working anymore. It's been kind of stagnant for a long time, and I think it's so important to encompass an idea like Montessori, who's been around for quite some time, right? But her ideas are still relevant today, and I think that's the interesting thing. It's not this just alternative type of education that was so limited to her specific time in Italy. It really is still relevant today. And that's why I encourage parents. There's a big understanding of, or there's a big focus on the materials. Montessori materials, they're beautiful. I understand. There's some great learning opportunities, some great understanding, but the real richness comes from the philosophy. And if you really understand the philosophy, you could make any activity, you could really you understand the child better, and that really will free you to really create that relationship with your child and to really understand how your child learns best. And that's what we encourage here at Montessori Centre International, is that focus on the philosophy, understanding the philosophy. And if you really understand that, then the materials then you really understand the materials as well, and you're able to kind of create your own materials. And Montessori should be for everybody. It shouldn't just be a private school system for the rich. It should be for everybody, and that's our goal as well, to make Montessori for everybody. So
yeah, absolutely. And as you've mentioned, it's still relevant today because it's based on the observation of the child. It's he was a scientist, and basically she never said that she invented a method, but that she's uncovered the natural laws of development. So basically it's just that, it's observing your child. And when you really observe your child and you don't have an agenda and you don't want to change the behavior to suit your own needs, your adult needs, then you can really understand your child, and life becomes much more peaceful as a parent as soon as you understand your child.
Exactly.
I mean, you still have tantrums and these kind of things, but you do know why, and you can put yourself into your child's shoes and it's become so much more, easier in a way.
I agree.
So yeah, you kind of have answered my question about, best tip for parents would be that, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's understanding that philosophy again, learning to observe, learning what your child really needs. Fostering independence is really key. I find that so important. Also, that idea that believing in your child's potential, and that's what I always say to parents, is that your child has huge potential. And often these days we're so busy, we just kind of do everything for our children. We think that's how we're helping them. So we're gonna quickly get them ready, or we're gonna quickly do that. But your child has so much potential, and your child really can be independent, can make their own snack, work with their own breakfast, things like that, dress themselves. They have such potential. And if you really believe in a child's potential, it builds their self-esteem and their confidence. So when they get into school, when they go into schooling, they have this self-esteem and confidence that is there. They're willing to take challenges. They're willing to try things that might be a little difficult. And so it's that believing in the child's potential. Also, regardless of what you do, involve your children. If you're going to the supermarket, if you're doing the day-to-day things, going to the post office, involve your children in that. The children learn through the everyday things. And I know it might be a little more challenging to take your child to the supermarket, but by the child being exposed to that, that's a great opportunity. And then the last thing that I was really thinking about is boundaries are really what make children free. And I think this is a common misconception with Montessori. They say, oh, that's where children just can do whatever they want. And yes, we encourage freedom and we encourage independent choice. But first you need to set up those boundaries. And that happens at home and also at school. If you set up those boundaries, those guidelines, those limits, then the child can really be free. But if the limits aren't there, then the child will constantly struggle about what real freedom means. And so, yes, that's what I encourage for that.
Yeah, what we say is freedom within limits.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And freedom doesn't go without limits.
No.
And yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Great, thank you. So, do you have a favorite book? You probably have read them all.
I do. I have read a lot of them and continue to read them. That's the thing, is you don't just read Montessori's work once. You're constantly going back and back. But my favorite one at the moment is this one. It's called Education and Peace. It's one of her short books. It's short lectures about her view of peace and education, and I'm finding it really inspiring in today's kind of crazy, hectic world to think about Montessori's idea of how we educate our children now will make for a peaceful future. And so that's the one I'm reading at the moment.
Even if we feel that we live in a more peaceful world, we can definitely do better.
Definitely.
Yeah, and when we know the history of Maria Montessori, knowing, she went through 2 world wars and under the Franco regime, under Mussolini regimes, we kind of understand why she was so passionate about that. She saw those kind of, people coming into power and thinking about what kind of childhood they had and, the things that we can change to make sure that, all children are those peaceful makers.
Exactly. And what I love about Montessori's views of children is she really focused on the similarities within all children of all races and nations. She focused on the similarities rather than the differences. And I think often we focus on the differences and we don't see that we're all the same. And through understanding and making connections and exposing children to different cultures and beliefs will really create that focus on the similarities and really empower children to be the future. So,
and that peacefulness, that peaceful, curriculum, and that connection, cooperation is very waved through the whole Montessori curriculum and through the whole philosophy. Okay, so it's great. Like from the fact that we have only one material for each type of materials, and waiting for your turn, and respect of your space with your mat, all of that participate to the vertical age grouping. Absolutely everything is there to bring peacefulness, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
So I wanted to know if you would like to share maybe your favorite quote with us. That's something that I've asked everyone.
Okay. I prepared that this morning. It's hard to pick just one, but
yeah, of course.
My favorite one at the moment is, if we touch children, we touch humanity. We must educate adults to realize that we can only better humanity through the child. We must realize that the child is the builder of man. And that's mine.
Is it from that Education and Peace then?
Yes, no, this is from, I'm sorry. This is,
you can find it later if you want. Don't worry.
Sorry, I'm not sure which one this is from. I was just looking at it this morning, but no, that idea of we have a responsibility as adults, not only as parents, but as teachers as well, and as future teachers as well, to really better the lives of the child, so they can better humanity. And I think that's important to remember.
That's absolutely a good reminder. And some things to have, I have a quote there that it's free the child potential and you will, I don't know it by heart, into the
power of the world. Yeah.
Yes, that's the one I have on my wall in my house. And for everybody in our family to read and to remind and to remember. Great. So let's see if we have some questions. I don't know if many people are watching live. I definitely see that we have some people watching live. And otherwise, we will, try to conclude. I know that some people were saying that they would love to do a distance learning accredited course. And that is possible.
Definitely.
So when you do the distance learning, I think you still have to do 1 week in London.
You have to do a 2-week intensive workshop to do the apparatus practice, and you also have to do teaching practice as well. So even if you do online, you have to go to school.
Yeah. And how do you do teaching practice when, like here in the UK, there are some areas when there are no Montessori schools at all. So it's super complicated when you are like tight with children or with your job. How do you do teaching practice when there is no Montessori schools?
Yeah, I mean, that would be a challenge, and that's something we look at. Maybe the course isn't right for you at the moment if there's no Montessori schools around, because we require 400 hours of teaching practice, so it's quite a lot. But again, we really want to create those best practitioners, and we realize that you can teach a lot in theory, but where it really comes together is when you see it in practice and when you try and implement it in practice. So we encourage people to find schools or make sure that they have time to do the teaching practice. The course takes 2 years to do the online distance learning early years educator course. So 1 year is for the theory, and then the second year is for the teaching practice. So it gives you some time and some flexibility to make arrangements or to find something like that.
Absolutely. And when you do the one in London, is it shorter than is it over a year?
No, so the early years educator course, which is the one I'm training on, we also have a foundation degree course, which is linked with LMU. That's a full-time course, and you can do it within 1 year. But you have to come to London several days a week, and there's teaching practice on top of that, so you do everything combined in 1 year. But the early years educator course is a 2-year course, and we also are offering different opportunities. People can do it part-time and full-time, the early years educator course, depending on what's best for them. We're thinking about how to be more flexible for the people that are training for today. So.
Yeah, it's a thing, right? The flexibility is what everybody wants, no?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Oh, I see a big question coming up. Let me try to put that up. Oh, right. Yeah, there was a question about different ways of teaching between one Montessori training and another. So, for example, in terms of how to roll the mat, so that lady said that she sees a lot of difference is when she check YouTube videos, like teachers have different ways to explain. And so it seems that there is a discrepancies between Montessori trainings, and I don't know if you've noticed that. I suppose there is a way that we understand the philosophy and how we teach it, and maybe a few differences in the way we present. Does it matter? I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, Montessori herself said we can't be so rigid in our presentations because we need to think about that individual child in front of us. So what is going to work for that individual child? Yes, there are many different ways to unroll and roll a mat. The thing that we look at, and the thing we focus at here is, can the child follow what you're doing? Is thinking about the economy of movement. How many movements are you putting in? Are you making it easy for a child to follow? Are you being consistent? So you're making sure remember, we're the role model. So are you unrolling the mat the same way every time? And also just thinking about, again, what is best for your child. And I think that we're constantly having discussions at college here about how we present material. Is this really relevant? Is this easy for the child to understand? And we're constantly tweaking our presentations. They're constantly changing slightly because we've seen something in practice, or we've seen something in schools that's really working so much better. And I think that's the thing, is we can't be so rigid in our presentations that we are not open to realizing that there are many ways to do one thing. But I think, again, the important is to be consistent, and can the child follow, and is there a sense of order, which are all Montessori principles, right? So yes, there are many ways to unroll and roll a mat, but again, we try and not focus on those on the differences. We try and focus on the similarities and what works best for the child. So
yeah, and as you say, it's more a matter of understanding the philosophy and why we do it that way, and two different teachers will do a bit differently, and it doesn't matter. So obviously, maybe someone who has done a training with you, or someone who has done, I did my training in Ireland, there are some presentations that are a bit different. I know that in Ireland, in my training, we were not introduced to the STEM game. It was not something that we were introduced to. And I remember my trainer saying, okay, in the United States, they are big into the STEM game. And obviously it was a training from 3 to 6. And she said, most of you will never work with a 6-year-old. So it was just not part of the presentation. So I learned afterwards. And, just because it was not, I don't know, a popular material in the classroom in Ireland, so it was not part of my training. It doesn't mean that my training is not as good. How to present the STEM game. You still have the philosophy behind it. So
exactly.
I know that we have many, maybe you had that Facebook group, Montessori Teacher, a huge American Facebook group, but we have many discussion, about the Pinterest. Do we allow the children to combine? What do you do when they decide to, do this amazing combination with all the materials together, and we all become very stressed and OCD as a teacher.
It's hard.
And but still, if the child is respectful, so let the child, explore. And it's always amazing to chat with other Montessori teachers about how they allow, don't allow, think about it, observe, and so on. And I love that.
And I love hearing how other people do it, and seeing and really reflecting on my own practice, reflecting, wow, maybe their way is easier for the child to understand, and maybe I can think about that. And I think that idea that we have to be so rigid and I was taught this way, when things are constantly evolving and things are constantly, you meet different teachers, you meet different children who might respond in a different way. And so I think that Montessori herself would, like she said, to not be so rigid in the presentations, but to think about the child and what is best for the child. So
absolutely. And I think that maybe something that we can be very rigid when we just discovered Montessori, despite that in the training we are told to be flexible and to observe, but we kind of, hold on to a presentation, saying, that's the way I need to present it. The child didn't react the way you said he would react, and we are a bit stressed about that. I remember, my daughter, she was at home most of the time between, in the early years. So I had the Montessori material. So she was presented to some of the Montessori material with me, and she was also in the Montessori classroom with me. So I was presenting her the material in my classroom. And I remember her, manipulating the knob cylinders. And she was respectful of the materials, but she was playing people in the bus. I still remember that. And as a very young teacher, I was annoyed because it was like, it's not what you're supposed to do with that,
It's for.
Yeah, it's not put and play. We don't do. And I was very young, obviously, and just starting. And I remember taking a training, in fact, with Montessori Centre International with Dawn Nasser, and I explained that situation. And she said, "Is she respectful of the material?" And said, "Yes, she doesn't do anything else." And she was even classifying them, by sizes, saying that the biggest cylinders was the daddy and the smaller was the baby. So she understood, the differences in size. So it was quite amazing, in fact. And she pointed out that and said, so just observe her. She doesn't, mishandling the material. So that's fine. And I started to feel so relaxed after that discussion. So it's so important as a teacher and as a parent to keep reflecting of what we observe and come back to what my Montessori has written and maybe discuss with some guides or some inspired mentors and find more experienced parents who can just reassure us that, it's going to be okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is
so
going to be okay.
You don't get to, if you look at various videos online, don't get to, oh my God, this one is right and that one is wrong, because probably both of them are right. And it's still depending of your own child.
Way to do it, yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that with those videos, you should find somebody that you really like and kind of follow their videos rather than looking at everyone and comparing, because the world, there's so many videos out there, there's so many things, you need to find what works for you.
Yeah, absolutely, because it can be overwhelming. You can find everything online, everything for free if you look carefully, but then you need to kind of find who you can relate to.
Exactly. And who really understands the philosophy.
Absolutely. Great. Brilliant. So it was a very good chat. Was very happy to have you. I think we have learned a lot, and we're going to obviously share all the links to the trainings that the center has to offer.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye.